The celebration filled every street on Earth. 3 years had passed since the Velkari Empire made contact with humanity, and today marked the greatest moment in human history. 7 million people were traveling to their new home on a planet called New Terra. The Velkari had given this world to humanity as a gift, a sign of eternal friendship between their species. Captain Hyunwoo stood on the bridge of the UES Harmony, the largest ship humanity had ever built. Through the massive windows, he could see the blue and green planet growing larger as they approached. Behind him, the crew worked at their stations with excited energy. They had been traveling for 6 months, and finally they were almost home. "All sections report ready for orbital insertion," his second officer reported. "The colonists are gathering in the viewing halls. Everyone wants to see their new world." Hyunwoo smiled. He had dreamed of this moment since he was a child reading stories about space exploration. Now he was living it. "Open the broadcast channel. Let Earth watch this with us." Back on Earth, in the Global Defense Initiative headquarters buried deep beneath the Korean peninsula, Director Ji-won watched the same view on her screens. Around her, dozens of analysts and military officers celebrated. She wanted to share their joy, but something felt wrong. She had spent 20 years in intelligence, and her instincts were screaming at her. "Ma'am, you should relax," her assistant said. "This is a good day. The Velkari have been nothing but friendly." Ji-won nodded slowly, but her eyes never left the screen. 3 years ago, when the Velkari ships first appeared in Earth's sky, she had been one of the few voices urging caution, but the aliens had been perfect guests. They shared technology, opened trade routes, and asked for almost nothing in return. She had started to believe she was just paranoid. On the Harmony, Captain Hyunwoo gave the order. "Begin orbital insertion. Take us home." The ship shuddered slightly as it entered New Terra's atmosphere. Through the windows, the planet's surface became clearer. Vast oceans sparkled in the sunlight. Mountain ranges stretched across continents. It looked exactly like the paradise the Velkari had promised. Then the sensors started screaming. "Captain, I'm reading multiple contacts," the tactical officer shouted. "They're decloaking right on top of us." Hyunwoo spun toward the displays. His blood turned to ice. Hundreds of ships appeared around the Harmony, surrounding it completely. They were Velkari warships, their weapons already charging. "Shields up! Send a distress signal to Earth." Hyunwoo grabbed the arms of his chair. "Try to contact the Velkari. Ask them what they're doing." The communications officer's hands flew across her console. "No response, sir. They're not answering on any channel." "Sir, they're firing." The first blast hit the Harmony's shields like a hammer. The ship rocked violently. Alarms blared throughout the vessel. Hyunwoo heard screams coming from the lower decks where the colonists were gathered. "Return fire," he ordered, knowing it was useless. The Harmony was a colony ship, not a warship. It had basic defensive weapons, but nothing that could fight hundreds of military vessels. On Earth, the celebration died instantly. Every screen showing the broadcast now displayed a nightmare. People watched as the massive colony ship was torn apart by weapons fire. They heard the screams. They saw the explosions. Director Ji-won was already running toward the command center, shouting orders. "Get me the Security Council. Scramble every ship we have. Send everything to New Terra." "Ma'am, New Terra is 6 months away at maximum speed," someone said. By the time our ships arrive, Ji-won didn't want to hear it. She knew the truth. There was no rescue coming. 7 million people were going to die, and all humanity could do was watch. Captain Hyunwoo fought to keep the Harmony together. "Launch all escape pods. Get the colonists off this ship." Throughout the massive vessel, hatches opened and small escape pods shot into space. Thousands of them, each carrying desperate families. They scattered in every direction, hoping to reach the planet's surface or at least escape the battle. The Velkari ships changed targets. They began hunting the escape pods one by one. Hyunwoo watched in horror as the pods were destroyed. Every single one. The Velkari weren't just attacking the ship. They were making sure no one escaped. No one survived. "Why are they doing this?" his second officer whispered. "We trusted them." The Harmony's shields finally collapsed. The next volley of fire tore through the hull, ripping massive holes in the ship's structure. Sections depressurized instantly. Thousands died in seconds. Hyunwoo knew he had only minutes left. He activated the ship-wide intercom, broadcasting to what remained of his crew and the colonists. "This is the captain. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Tell Earth. Tell them we were wrong to trust. Tell them." Another explosion cut off his words. The bridge shattered. Captain Hyunwoo and his crew died still strapped in their chairs. The massacre continued for 4 more hours. The Velkari took their time. They destroyed every escape pod, every shuttle, every lifeboat. When human ships tried to flee to the planet's surface, the Velkari shot them down. When survivors tried to hide in the debris, the Velkari found them and killed them. 7 million people died while Earth watched. Then, when it was over, when the last human was dead and their bodies floated in the cold vacuum of space, the Velkari sent a message. Every screen on Earth, every computer, every device capable of receiving a signal, suddenly showed the same face. It was a Velkari commander, his features sharp and cruel. His name appeared on the screen, High Commander Ralmuth. "Greetings, humans," he said. His voice was calm, almost pleasant. "You have just witnessed the opening statement of your extinction. 3 years ago we made contact with your species. You believed we came in friendship. You were wrong. We came to study you, to learn your weaknesses, to prepare for this moment." Director Ji-won stared at the screen, her fists clenched so tight her nails drew blood from her palms. Ralmuth continued, "Your species is aggressive, expansionist, and too clever for your own good. In time, you would become a threat to the Velkari Empire. We cannot allow that. The 7 million who died today were just the beginning. Our armada is already moving toward your home world. 40,000 warships, the full might of the Velkari military." The image changed, showing a massive fleet of ships moving through space. The size of it was overwhelming. Earth's entire defense fleet numbered only 200 ships. "You have 1 month before we arrive," Ralmuth said. "We will not offer you surrender terms. We will not negotiate. We will simply erase you from existence. Your cities will burn. Your oceans will boil. Your species will be forgotten. This is the price of being weak in a galaxy of predators." The transmission ended. Earth fell silent. In every city and every home, people stood frozen in shock and grief. Some cried. Some raged. Some simply stared at empty screens, unable to process what they had just witnessed. In the command center, Director Ji-won slowly sat down. Around her, military officers waited for orders. The weight of 7 million deaths pressed down on the room like a physical force. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was quiet but clear. "Get me Project Sunbreaker's research team. Tell them we're activating the program." Her assistant's face went pale. "Ma'am, that project was theoretical. We never meant to actually use it." The cost doesn't matter anymore," Ji-won said. She looked at the screen showing the Velkari Armada. "They want to erase us? Fine, we'll show them what happens when you try to kill humanity. We'll burn their worlds. We'll ash their suns. And we'll make sure the galaxy never forgets what happened when someone tried to make us extinct." She stood up, her decision made. "Send the activation codes. We're going to war." Admiral Taeyang had not slept in 3 days. He stood in the war room deep underground, staring at the holographic display showing the Velkari Armada. 40,000 ships all heading toward Earth. His own fleet of 200 ships looked pathetic in comparison. "We can't win a direct fight," his tactical officer said quietly. Everyone in the room already knew this, but someone had to say it out loud. "Then we don't fight directly," Taeyang replied. He turned to face Director Ji-won, who had just entered the room. "You said Project Sunbreaker is ready?" Ji-won nodded. "Dr. Yuna and her team have been working on it since first contact. They're waiting for you in Research Lab 7. Taeyang had heard whispers about Project Sunbreaker over the years. It was the kind of weapon that paranoid scientists designed in secret, the kind that sane people hoped would never be needed. Now it was their only chance. He took an elevator down another 3 levels, each one requiring different security clearances. Finally, he reached a laboratory carved out of solid rock. Inside, a small team of scientists worked at terminals surrounding a device that looked disappointingly simple. It was barely larger than a satellite, covered in strange panels that seemed to bend light around them. "Admiral Taeyang," a woman said, approaching him. She was small, her eyes red from lack of sleep, her hands shaking slightly. "I'm Dr. Yuna. I lead this project." "Show me how it works," Taeyang said. Dr. Yuna led him to a display showing a simulation. Every star is a balance between gravity trying to crush it and fusion pushing outward. Project Sunbreaker disrupts that balance. We use quantum entanglement on a scale that shouldn't be possible. When we place this device inside a star's core, it accelerates the fusion process by a factor of several billion. The simulation showed a yellow star suddenly swelling, growing larger and larger, turning red as it expanded. The star becomes a red giant in hours instead of billions of years, Dr. Yuna continued. Her voice was flat, emotionless. Any planet in the system gets consumed. Everything dies. Taeyang stared at the simulation. How many of these devices do we have? 12. We can build more, but it would take months. 12 will have to be enough. Taeyang looked at the scientists around the room. They all looked haunted. You've been working on this weapon for 3 years. Did you ever think we would actually use it? Dr. Yuna was quiet for a moment. Honestly, no, I thought first contact would work. I thought we would join the galactic community peacefully. This weapon was just insurance, a deterrent. She looked up at him. I was wrong. And now billions are going to die because of my work. Billions of them or billions of us, Taeyang said. Those are the only choices. Before Dr. Yuna could respond, another scientist approached. His name was Dae-hyun, and he was the second in command of the project. His face was angry. We shouldn't use this weapon, Dae-hyun said bluntly. Admiral, do you understand what we're talking about? This isn't a military strike. This is genocide on a scale the universe has never seen. We'll be killing civilians, children, people who have nothing to do with their military's decisions. Taeyang met his eyes. I know exactly what we're talking about. Then how can you even consider it? Dae-hyun's voice rose. The Velkari killed 7 million of us. That's a war crime, an atrocity. But if we use Sunbreaker on 12 of their systems, we'll kill billions. We'll be worse than they are. Dr. Yuna put a hand on Dae-hyun's shoulder. We've had this argument 100 times, and I'll keep having it until someone listens. Dae-hyun turned to face the other scientists. If we do this, we're not defenders. We're monsters. History will remember us as the species that committed genocide to save themselves. History won't remember anything if we're all dead, Taeyang said quietly. I understand your objection. I respect it. But the Velkari aren't coming here to conquer us. They're coming to exterminate us. Every man, woman, and child on Earth. If we don't stop them, there won't be anyone left to judge us. The laboratory fell silent. Finally, Dr. Yuna spoke. The Global Assembly is voting on authorization tonight. Until they decide, we keep preparing. Taeyang left the laboratory and returned to the surface. That evening, he watched the Global Assembly session on his office screen. Representatives from every nation argued about Project Sunbreaker. The session lasted 9 hours. Representative Hana spoke against the weapon. She was young, idealistic, and her words carried weight. We cannot become destroyers of worlds. There must be another way. Negotiation. Targeted strikes against their military, anything but this. If we use Sunbreaker, we lose our humanity. We become exactly what the Velkari accused us of being. Many representatives applauded her speech, but then Representative Kwan took the floor. He was older, a veteran of Earth's last major war. He carried a datapad with him. I have here the intercepted communications from the Velkari High Command, Kwan said. His voice was tired. Would you like to know what they're saying? They've already divided Earth's territory among their noble houses. They're arguing about who gets which continents. They have plans for our cities, our resources, our history. They're going to wipe it all away and build their own civilization on our ashes. He looked directly at Representative Hana. You speak of negotiation. I appreciate your idealism, but the Velkari have made their intentions clear. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy. They see us as a pest to be eliminated. The only question is whether we fight back or die quietly. The vote was called. The chamber fell silent as the results appeared on the screens. 127 votes in favor of authorizing Project Sunbreaker. 98 votes against. Earth had made its choice. Admiral Taeyang received the authorization codes at midnight. By dawn, he had assembled 12 strike groups from his fleet. Each group consisted of 5 ships carefully chosen for speed and stealth. Each group carried 1 Sunbreaker device. Dr. Yuna and her team split up, with 1 scientist accompanying each strike group to deploy the weapon. She assigned herself to Strike Group 4, commanded by Captain Min-ah. Before the fleet launched, Admiral Taeyang gathered all the commanders for a final briefing. They met in a secure hangar where the ships waited. You all know the mission, Taeyang said. We have 29 days before the Velkari Armada reaches Earth. In that time, you need to reach Velkari space, penetrate their defenses, and deploy your Sunbreaker devices in their home systems. We're targeting the 12 most populated systems in their empire, including their homeworld. He paused, looking at each commander. They were all volunteers. They all knew they probably wouldn't come back. I won't lie to you. This mission will make you war criminals by any civilized standard. You will kill billions of people who never attacked us, who never even knew this war was happening. You will destroy entire worlds. If we survive this war, you may face trial for what you're about to do. Commander Sujin, who led Strike Group 7, spoke up. And if we don't do it? Then everyone dies, Taeyang said simply. Not just soldiers. Not just military targets, everyone, every child on Earth, every dream of the future. Everything humanity has ever built or will build. The Velkari won't leave anything behind. Captain Minna raised her hand. Sir, what about the Velkari civilians? The ones we're going to kill. Don't they deserve a warning? A chance to evacuate? If we warn them, they'll stop us, Taeyang said. Their military will be waiting. The mission will fail. So we just murder them in their sleep, Minna said bitterly. Yes. Taeyang didn't look away. That's exactly what we're going to do. And we're going to have to live with it for the rest of our lives. Dr. Yuna watched this exchange from the side of the hangar. Her hands were trembling again. She thought about the simulation, about stars swelling and planets burning. She thought about the billions of lives that would end because of her work. Daehyun stood next to her. It's not too late to stop this, he whispered. Yes, it is, she replied. It was too late the moment the Velkari opened fire on the Harmony. The strike groups launched at dawn. 12 sets of 5 ships, 60 vessels total, leaving Earth's defense fleet dangerously weak. But they had no choice. If the mission failed, the fleet wouldn't matter anyway. Admiral Taeyang watched them go from the command center. Director Ji-won stood beside him. Do you think they'll make it? She asked. Some of them will, Taeyang said. Maybe enough. And if they succeed? Taeyang was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, then we'll have saved humanity, and we'll have become the thing we always feared we might be. Destroyers. Killers on a cosmic scale. Ji-won looked at him. Can you live with that? I don't know, Taeyang admitted, but I'd rather live with guilt than watch everyone I love die. Wouldn't you? Ji-won had no answer. They stood together in silence, watching the stars, knowing that in 29 days everything would change. One way or another, the galaxy would never be the same. Commander Sujin's hands gripped the controls of her destroyer as they entered Velkari space. Behind her, 4 other ships from Strike Group 7 followed in tight formation. They had been traveling for 6 days, using captured Velkari transponder codes from the destroyed Harmony. So far, the disguise was working. Passing through the outer border now, her navigation officer reported. Multiple Velkari patrols in the area, but they're not challenging us. Sujin forced herself to breathe normally. Every Velkari ship they passed could be their death. One suspicious scan, one clever officer noticing something wrong, and they would be discovered. Keep the energy signature low, she ordered. We're supposed to be merchant vessels, remember? Nothing special, nothing worth a second look. The bridge crew worked in tense silence. They had practiced this infiltration 1,000 times in simulations. But simulations didn't capture the fear of knowing that millions of enemy ships could be waiting just beyond sensor range. On the 6th day, their luck ran out. Commander, we have a Velkari patrol approaching, the tactical officer said. 3 warships. They're hailing us. Sujin's heart hammered in her chest. Send the automated response. Tell them we're transporting medical supplies to the inner colonies. The response went out. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the patrol ships changed course, moving to intercept. They're not buying it, the tactical officer said. Weapons charging. They're going to fire. All ships drop the disguise, Sujin shouted. Battle stations. Make for the nebula at heading 270. Strike Group 7's ships suddenly accelerated, their true military engines revealing themselves. The Velkari patrol gave chase, firing as they came. Energy beams cut through space, missing the fleeing human ships by meters. Sujin pushed her destroyer to maximum speed. The nebula was 2 million kilometers away, a massive cloud of gas and dust that would interfere with Velkari sensors. If they could reach it, they might survive. Taking fire, one of her escort ships reported. Shields at 60%. The nebula grew larger on the screens. Almost there, almost. They plunged into the thick clouds of gas. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The Velkari ships followed, but now the advantage shifted. Human sensors, designed to work in Earth's complex atmosphere, performed better in the dense nebula than Velkari systems designed for the clarity of space. I have them on scope, Sujin's tactical officer said. 3 contacts searching for us. They're spread out, scanning different sectors. Perfect. Sujin smiled grimly. They divided their forces. Target the closest one. All ships converge and fire on my mark. Strike Group 7 circled through the nebula like sharks. The Velkari patrol ship never saw them coming. 5 human warships appeared from the gas clouds and opened fire simultaneously. The Velkari ship's shields collapsed in seconds. Its hull split apart in a brilliant explosion. The other 2 Velkari ships turned toward the explosion, but they were too late. Sujin's group was already repositioning, using the nebula to hide their movements. The second Velkari ship died just as quickly, but the third patrol vessel was commanded by someone smarter. Instead of pursuing into the clouds, it retreated to the nebula's edge and called for reinforcements. "We need to go," Sujin ordered. "Now, before more of them arrive." Strike Group 7 fled deeper into Velkari space. They had won their first battle, but 2 of their 5 ships were damaged. Sujin knew they were lucky to be alive. Across Velkari space, the other strike groups fought their own battles. Some got through undetected. Others weren't so lucky. Strike Group 3 was destroyed completely. Their Sunbreaker device lost. Strike Group 9 made it halfway to their target before being cornered by a Velkari battle group. They activated their device early, throwing it into the nearest star before they were destroyed. It wasn't one of the primary targets, but it still worked. Strike Group 4, commanded by Captain Minna, reached the Velkari homeworld without being detected. Dr. Yuna stood on the bridge, watching the planet grow larger on the view screen. Velkara was beautiful. Blue oceans covered most of its surface, with 3 major continents visible from orbit. Cities sparkled in the sunlight, massive structures that showed advanced engineering. Dr. Yuna could see ships coming and going, civilian traffic going about normal business. 15 billion people live down there, Dr. Yuna whispered. 15 billion. Captain Minna stood next to her. "I know. Children, families, people who probably don't even know their military attacked us." "I know," Minna repeated. Her voice was harder now. "But 7 million of our people are dead, and 40,000 warships are heading to Earth to kill billions more." Dr. Yuna closed her eyes. She had run the calculations 100 times. There was no other way. If they didn't deploy Sunbreaker, humanity would die. But knowing that didn't make it easier. "Prepare the device for launch," she said quietly. The Sunbreaker device was loaded into a specialized launch tube. It was small, almost insignificant looking. Hard to believe something so simple could kill a star. "Device ready," the weapons officer reported. Dr. Yuna looked at Captain Minna. "Once we launch this, there's no taking it back. In 16 hours, the device will reach the star's core. After that, the sun will begin to die." "How long until the planet burns?" Minna asked. 3 days, maybe 4. The star will expand, and Velkara will be consumed. Minna took a deep breath. "Launch the device." The Sunbreaker shot from the tube, a small metal sphere heading toward the massive sun at the center of the system. It looked like nothing, a tiny speck against the burning surface of the star. "Device is away," the weapons officer confirmed. "Trajectory locked. It will reach the core in 16 hours. "Now we wait," Dr. Yuna said. But they didn't wait quietly. Within an hour, Velkari Defense Forces detected the human ship in orbit. Alarm sirens blared across military installations. 3 patrol groups scrambled to intercept. Captain Minna saw them coming on sensors. "They found us. All ships, prepare to run." "We can't outrun them," her tactical officer said. "They're too fast." "Then we lead them away from the star," Minna decided. "If they destroy us before the device activates, this was all for nothing. Buy time, whatever it takes." Strike Group 4 fled toward the system's asteroid belt, the Velkari ships in pursuit. The chase lasted for hours. Minna used every trick she knew, hiding behind asteroids, using the gravity of the system's planets to slingshot away, even dumping cargo to create debris fields that slowed the pursuing ships. One of her escorts was destroyed, then another. But they kept running, kept fighting, kept buying time. 16 hours after launch, deep in the star's core, The Sunbreaker device activated. At first, nothing seemed to change. The star kept burning as it had for billions of years. But Dr. Yuna, watching from her damaged ship, saw the readings change on her instruments. "The fusion rate is increasing," she reported. "It's working. The star is dying." The effect accelerated rapidly. Within an hour, the star's surface began to brighten. Within 2 hours, it started to swell, growing larger as increased fusion pressure pushed the outer layers outward. On Velkara, scientists noticed the changes immediately. At first, they didn't understand what they were seeing. Then, the terrible truth became clear. Their sun was becoming a red giant, and it was happening impossibly fast. Panic erupted across the planet. People flooded spaceports, desperate to escape. The Velkari government tried to maintain order, but there weren't enough ships. They could save perhaps 10% of the population if they were lucky. High Commander Ralmoth, who had broadcast the threat to Earth weeks ago, now stood in his command center watching his homeworld die. He understood what the humans had done. He understood the weapon they had used. "Recall the Armada," he ordered. "All ships return to Velkari space immediately." His second officer stared at him. "Sir, if we recall the Armada, Earth will survive." "I don't care about Earth anymore," Ralmoth shouted. "Our people are dying. We need every ship for evacuation." But he was too late. The order went out, but the Armada was still 20 days from Earth. By the time they could return, Velkara would be gone. Admiral Taeyang received the report on Earth. Strike Group 4 had succeeded. The Velkari homeworld would be destroyed within 3 days. And across Velkari space, 11 other strike groups were deploying their devices in other systems. "They're recalling their Armada," Director Jiwan reported. "The threat to Earth is over." Taeyang didn't celebrate. He looked at the casualty reports from the strike groups. 37 ships destroyed. Thousands of human sailors dead. And soon, billions of Velkari would follow them. "Order the surviving strike groups to complete their missions," he said quietly. Jiwan looked at him in surprise. "But the Armada is retreating. We've won. We don't need to destroy the other systems." "The Velkari killed 7 million of us," Taeyang said. His voice was cold. "They told us they were coming to exterminate our species. They showed no mercy. They will get none from us. This is revenge," Jiwan said, "not defense." "Call it whatever you want," Taeyang replied. "But if we let them survive this, they'll come back. Maybe not today, maybe not for 100 years, but they'll come back. And next time, they'll be ready for us." "No, we finish this now." The orders went out. In 12 different star systems, Sunbreaker devices reached their targets and activated. 12 suns began to die. Captain Minna's damaged ship limped away from Velkara, heading for deep space. Behind them, the star continued to swell. The planet was already burning, its atmosphere being stripped away by the increasing radiation. Dr. Yuna watched the destruction through the rear cameras. She saw the evacuation ships fleeing the planet, saw the cities glowing as they burned, saw a world dying. "What have I done?" she whispered. No one answered. Everyone on the bridge was watching the same thing, thinking the same thoughts. They had saved Earth. They had won the war. And the cost of victory was written in fire across the sky behind them. The first sun turned red 3 days after the Sunbreaker device activated. Scientists across the galaxy watched in horror as Velkara's star expanded to twice its normal size. Then 4 times, then 10. The planet didn't explode or shatter dramatically. It simply heated up until the oceans boiled away, until the atmosphere burned off, until the surface melted into glowing magma. Then the expanding star reached the planet's orbit and consumed it entirely. 15 billion Velkari died on their homeworld. Another 2 billion died on the colony worlds in the same system. The evacuation saved barely 500 million lives, and those survivors were crammed into transport ships never designed for long-term habitation. Commander Sujin watched from a safe distance as the star continued to grow. Her strike group had survived their mission and was heading back to Earth, but she couldn't look away from what they had caused. Orders from Admiral Taeyang, her communications officer, reported. He's asking what we should do about the evacuation transports. Sujin turned to look at her tactical officer, a young man named Jae-sung. What's your recommendation? Jae-sung didn't hesitate. We should destroy them, Commander. They're Velkhari military and civilian transports mixed together. If we let them flee, they'll regroup. They'll rebuild. They'll come back for revenge. Those ships are full of refugees, Sujin said quietly. Families, children, people who just watched their world burn. They watched our people die too, Jae-sung replied. 7 million humans on the Harmony. The Velkhari didn't let anyone escape then. Why should we show them mercy they didn't show us? Sujin looked around the bridge. Half her crew nodded in agreement with Jae-sung. The other half looked uncomfortable but said nothing. She understood both sides. The anger, the desire for revenge, the fear that any surviving Velkhari would return stronger and more determined to destroy humanity, but also the basic human decency that said you don't murder refugees fleeing a disaster you caused. Get me a channel to Admiral Tae Yang, she ordered. The Admiral's face appeared on her screen a moment later. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. Probably hadn't, Commander Sujin, he said. Report. Sir, we have multiple Velkhari evacuation transports in sensor range. Requesting orders regarding engagement. Tae Yang was quiet for several seconds. Behind him, Sujin could see Director Ji-won standing in the command center. Ji-won leaned close and whispered something to the Admiral. Director Ji-won advises destroying them. Tae Yang said finally, military necessity. Can't leave any potential threats alive. And your orders, sir? Another long pause. Then Tae Yang said something that surprised everyone on the bridge. Let them go, Commander. We killed their world. That's enough. Director Ji-won's face appeared on the screen, angry. Admiral, we need to discuss this. There's nothing to discuss, Tae Yang said firmly. I'm not going to order my ships to hunt down refugees. We used a weapon that killed billions. We did what we needed to do to survive. But I won't turn us into monsters who murder fleeing civilians. That's where I draw the line. He looked directly at Commander Sujin. Let the evacuation ships go. Broadcast a message that we won't fire on any unarmed vessel attempting to leave the system. Then return to Earth. Sujin felt relief wash through her. Yes, sir. The message went out across all channels. At first, the Velkhari didn't believe it. They thought it was a trick, a way to lure them into a trap. But when human ships moved aside to let the transports pass when no weapons fired, they began to believe. One Velkhari transport captain sent a message back. It was just 3 words, why spare us? Commander Sujin replied personally. Because that's the difference between us and you. We do what we must to survive, but we don't kill those who can't fight back. Remember that. Across Velkhari space, the same scene played out in 12 different systems. Suns expanded. Planets burned. Billions died. The Velkhari Empire, which had controlled 200 billion people across 47 systems, collapsed in less than a week. The Velkhari Armada, 40,000 ships strong, fragmented when news of the disaster reached them. Some captains ordered their ships to continue toward Earth, determined to make humanity pay. Others turned back, desperate to save what remained of their people. Many simply fled to neutral space, becoming pirates or mercenaries rather than serve an empire that no longer existed. Admiral Tokvar was one of the officers who refused to retreat. His family had lived on Velkhara. His wife, his children, his parents, all dead. The only thing he had left was revenge. He rallied 5,000 ships to his cause. Other captains who had lost everything joined him. They abandoned military doctrine and strategy in favor of a single goal: reach Earth and kill as many humans as possible before they died. Tokvar's fleet accelerated to maximum speed, burning through fuel reserves that should have been saved. They weren't planning to go home anyway. Admiral Tae Yang received reports of the approaching fleet and assembled what remained of Earth's defenses. His original 200 ships had been reduced to 67 operational vessels after weeks of fighting. The strike groups were still scattered across space, too far away to help. We make our stand at the Kuiper Belt, Tae Yang decided. Use the asteroids and debris as cover. Make them work for every ship they destroy. The human fleet positioned themselves in the outer reaches of the solar system, where billions of icy rocks and small planetoids orbited in the cold dark. It was perfect territory for an ambush. Commander Hyun-sik, the younger brother of Captain Hyun-woo who had died on the Harmony, commanded one of the destroyer wings. He had volunteered for the most dangerous position, the forward scouts who would make first contact with the enemy. "I'm going to kill as many of them as I can," he told his crew. "For my brother. For the 7 million. For every human they tried to erase." The Battle of the Outer Dark began when Hyun-sik's destroyer detected the Valkyrie advance fleet, 5,000 ships against 67. The humans didn't even try to fight conventionally. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics. A human ship would emerge from behind an asteroid, fire everything it had at a Valkyrie target, then disappear back into the debris field. The Valkyrie would give chase, only to fly into an ambush where 3 more human ships waited. The battle lasted 3 days. The Kuiper Belt became a graveyard of shattered ships and frozen corpses. Valkyrie vessels outnumbered the humans 70-1, but the humans knew the terrain and fought with desperate creativity. Admiral Tokvar, commanding from his flagship, grew increasingly frustrated. Every time he cornered a human ship, it would lead him into a trap. Every time he tried to form his fleet into proper battle formation, human raiders would strike from an unexpected angle. "These humans fight like cowards," he shouted at his bridge crew. "They hide in ambush instead of facing us honorably." His second officer replied quietly, "Sir, they're outnumbered 70-1. Would you fight honorably in their position?" Tokvar didn't answer. He just ordered his fleet to keep advancing. On the second day of battle, Commander Hyun-sik saw an opportunity. Tokvar's flagship had separated from the main fleet to pursue a damaged human cruiser. If someone could get close enough, they could take out the Valkyrie commander and throw their fleet into chaos. "All power to engines," Hyun-sik ordered. "We're going after the flagship." His crew knew what that meant. There was no plan for escape, no thought of survival. This was a suicide run. Hyun-sik's destroyer accelerated directly toward the Valkyrie flagship, weapons firing constantly. The flagship's shields absorbed the damage easily, but Hyun-sik wasn't trying to destroy it from range. He was trying to get close, shields failing. His tactical officer shouted as return fire pounded the destroyer. "Keep going." Hyun-sik gripped his chair as the ship shook apart around him. Almost there. They crashed into the Valkyrie flagship at ramming speed. Both ships exploded in a brilliant fireball that lit up the dark of space. Admiral Tokvar died instantly, along with 300 of his crew. Commander Hyun-sik and everyone on his destroyer died too, but they took the enemy commander with them. The Valkyrie fleet fell into chaos without their leader. Different captains gave different orders. Some wanted to retreat. Others wanted to keep advancing. They argued while human ships picked them apart. Admiral Tae-yang watched the battle from his command ship, knowing every casualty report by heart. When Hyun-sik's destroyer disappeared from sensors, he closed his eyes briefly. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked quietly. 12, sir. 12 operational vessels. 12 out of 200. The price of victory." But the Valkyrie were breaking. Their fleet, leaderless and demoralized, began to scatter. Some ships fled to the outer systems. Others tried to return to what was left of their empire. A few kept fighting until they were destroyed. By the end of the 3rd day, the Battle of the Outer Dark was over. The Valkyrie had lost every ship. The humans had lost all but 12 of theirs. Earth was safe. Admiral Tae-yang broadcast a message to the planet below. "This is Admiral Tae-yang. The threat is over. The Valkyrie Armada has been destroyed. We've won." But he didn't sound happy. He didn't sound proud. He just sounded tired. In the command center, Director Ji-won stood next to him. "We saved humanity," she said. "Yes," Tae-yang replied. "But what did we become to do it?" Neither of them had an answer. They just stood there looking at the stars, knowing that 12 suns had turned to ash because humanity had decided to survive at any cost. 3 months passed after the last Valkyrie ship was destroyed. Earth should have been celebrating. Victory parades should have filled every street. Instead, the planet was quiet, processing what humanity had done to survive. The galaxy had gone silent too. Other alien civilizations, dozens of them, had watched the war between humanity and the Valkyrie. They had seen the Harmony Massacre. They had seen the Sunbreaker weapon turn 12 stars into red giants. They had seen billions die in flames. Now none of them would talk to Earth. Every attempt at communication was ignored. Trade routes that had been established closed overnight. The few alien diplomats still on Earth quietly boarded ships and left without explanation. Director Ji-won understood why. Humanity had revealed itself as something terrifying. a species that, when threatened with extinction, would burn entire solar systems rather than surrender. The galaxy had never seen a weapon like Sunbreaker used before. Now they knew humans possessed it and were willing to use it. "We're being quarantined," she told Admiral Tai Yang during a meeting. The Galactic Council issued a formal declaration. Earth is considered too dangerous for contact. Any civilization that communicates with us will be sanctioned. Tai Yang nodded slowly. He had expected this.
How long?
Indefinitely. They're afraid of us. Good, Tai Yang said. Fear will keep them from trying what the Velkari tried. But Jiwan shook her head. Fear isn't respect. Fear makes enemies, not allies. We wanted to join the galactic community. Now we're outcasts. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message. There was a situation at the Velkari refugee camp on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Director Jiwan and Admiral Tai Yang took a transport to investigate. The camp housed 300 million Velkari survivors, all that remained of their 200 billion-strong civilization. The survivors had been granted asylum on Europa after the war, given basic shelter and supplies. It was more mercy than the Velkari had shown to humanity, but it still wasn't much. Jiwan walked through the camp accompanied by a security detail. The Velkari refugees watched her pass with empty eyes. They didn't show hatred or anger. They just looked broken. A human aid worker approached her. "Director Jiwan, there's someone who asked to meet you." The worker led her to a small shelter where a young Velkari sat on a basic cot. Her name was Tessara, according to the records. She was 19 years old by human standards. She had been a university student on Velkara studying music. Jiwan sat down across from her. "You wanted to see me?" Tessara didn't respond at first. She just stared at the floor. Finally, in broken but understandable human language, she spoke. "I watched my world burn," Tessara said quietly. "I was on an evacuation transport. Through the window, I saw the sun grow larger. I saw the cities melt. I saw the ocean turn to steam. My family was down there. My friends. Everyone I ever knew. They all burned." Jiwan felt something twist in her chest. "I'm sorry. Are you?" Tessara looked up, meeting her eyes. "You gave the order. You killed them all. Are you really sorry?" "Yes," Jiwan said honestly. "I'm sorry it was necessary." "Necessary?" Tessara laughed bitterly. "That's what every monster says. It was necessary. We had no choice. But you always have a choice." "Your military killed 7 million of my people," Jiwan replied, keeping her voice level. "They broadcasted across Earth. They told us they were coming to exterminate our entire species. What choice did they give us?" Tessara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I didn't know about the harmony until after. Most civilians didn't. We were just told that first contact had been made, that we had new allies. Then one day the sun started dying and everyone panicked. No one told us why until later. So you're saying you were innocent. I'm saying I didn't kill anyone. My family didn't kill anyone. The billions who died on the 12 worlds, most of them never hurt anyone. But you killed them anyway." Jiwan had no response to that. It was true. They had killed billions of innocents along with the guilty. That was the nature of the weapon they had chosen. She stood up to leave. Before she reached the door, Tessara spoke again. "I don't hate you," the young Velkari said. "I'm too tired to hate. I just wanted you to see me, to know that I existed, that my family existed, so you would remember that the numbers you killed weren't just numbers. They were people." Jiwan left the shelter with tears in her eyes. She had given the order that killed billions. She had done it to save Earth. Both things were true, and she would have to live with that contradiction for the rest of her life. 6 months after the war ended, Dr. Yuna stood trial at the International Court. She was charged with crimes against sapient life for her role in creating and deploying the Sunbreaker weapon. The trial was broadcast across Earth and beyond. The prosecution argued that Dr. Yuna had created a weapon of mass destruction and used it against civilian populations. They showed footage of the dying suns, of the burning planets, of the evacuation ships fleeing the expanding stars. They presented estimates of the death toll, 14 billion on Velkara, 9 billion on the secondary targets, more billions on the planets that were consumed. The defense called only one witness, Admiral Tai Yang. Dr. Yuna was following lawful orders during wartime, Tai Yang testified. She built the weapon she was ordered to build. She deployed it as directed. If anyone is guilty here, it's the leadership who gave those orders. It's me. The prosecutor turned to him. Admiral, do you believe the use of the Sunbreaker weapon was justified? Tae-Yang thought carefully before answering. I believe it was necessary. I'm not sure that's the same as justified. We were facing extinction. 7 million of our people had already been murdered, and 40,000 warships were coming to kill the rest. Sunbreaker was the only weapon that could stop them. But billions of civilians died. Yes, and that will haunt me until I die. But if I could go back and make the choice again, knowing what I know now, I would make the same decision. Because the alternative was the death of every human being alive. The trial lasted 3 weeks. In the end, the court found Dr. Yuna guilty, but sentenced her to time already served, acknowledging the impossible circumstances of war. She was released, but her career was over. No university would hire her. No research institution would work with her. Instead, she volunteered for the Velkari Restoration Project, an effort to help the survivors rebuild some kind of life. She spent her days designing new habitats, improved life support systems, anything that might help the refugees. Dae-hyun, her former colleague who had argued against using Sunbreaker, joined her in this work. They didn't talk much about the past. They just tried to make things slightly better for those who had survived. On the first anniversary of the Harmony Massacre, Earth built 2 monuments. The first stood in Seoul, a massive structure listing the names of all 7 million humans who died at New Terra. Families gathered to read the names, to remember. The second monument was more controversial. It stood in Geneva outside the United Nations building. It was a simple black wall, 50 meters tall, with billions of names carved into it in tiny letters. Every Velkari who died in the 12 systems. Every civilian, every child, everyone who burned when the suns died. Many humans protested the second monument. They argued that the Velkari didn't deserve to be remembered, that building a monument to the enemy was a betrayal of the 7 million. But others argued just as strongly that humanity needed to remember the cost of its survival. Representative Hana, who had voted against using Sunbreaker, delivered the dedication speech. We gather here today not to celebrate, she said, reading from prepared remarks. Not to glorify, not to claim righteousness. We gather to remember, to bear witness, to acknowledge that our survival came at a terrible price. She paused, looking at the wall of names behind her. The Velkari killed 7 million of us without mercy. For that crime, we killed billions of them. We destroyed their civilization. We turned their sons to ash. We did this to survive, and I cannot say with certainty that there was another way. But I can say this: we must never forget what we did. We must carry this weight forever, because the moment we forget, the moment we convince ourselves it was easy or simple or purely righteous, that's the moment we become truly monstrous. The speech was broadcast across Earth and to the Velkari refugee camps. Tessara watched it from her shelter on Europa. She cried, though she wasn't sure if it was from grief or something else. Maybe a small measure of relief that someone acknowledged what had been lost. 5 years passed. Earth began to rebuild its relationship with the galaxy slowly. The quarantine remained in place, but some brave civilizations began sending cautious messages. They wanted to understand what humans were, whether they were conquerors or survivors, monsters or merely desperate. Admiral Tae-Yang retired from military service. He spent his remaining years working as a civilian engineer, helping design new habitats for the Velkari refugees. He never spoke publicly about the war again. One day, while working on a construction project on Europa, he received a message. It came from the Galactic Council, transmitted through secure channels. The Council had been watching Earth for 5 years. They had observed how humanity treated the Velkari survivors. They had seen the monuments built to remember the dead on both sides. They had watched as humans grappled with what they had done, neither hiding from it nor glorifying it. We are prepared to lift the quarantine, the message read. But understand this: the galaxy will never forget what humanity is capable of. You will be welcomed back, but you will be watched. On wrong move, and you will be isolated forever. Tae-Yang shared the message with Director Ji-won, now retired herself. They sat together, 2 old warriors looking at the stars. Do you think we deserve a second chance? Ji-won asked. I don't know, Tae-Yang admitted. But I'm grateful we're getting one. The next ship to leave Earth was called the New Horizon, commanded by Captain Soo-jin. She had survived the war and earned her promotion through years of service. Her crew included both humans and Velkari, working together for the first time. One of the Velkari engineers was named Jinko. He was Tessara's cousin, one of the few members of her family to survive the evacuation. He had initially hated humans, blamed them for everything. But over 5 years, working alongside them in the refugee camps, he began to see them differently. Not as monsters, but as people who had done monstrous things because they saw no other choice. As the New Horizon crossed into Council space on its diplomatic mission, Jinko approached Captain Sujin on the bridge. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. If it happened again. If your species faced extinction again, would you use Sunbreaker?" Sujin looked out at the stars, thinking about her answer carefully. Finally, she said, "If our survival demanded it, yes, we would use it again. But we would spend every day afterward wishing we hadn't needed to. We would remember every name. We would carry that weight forever. Because that's what separates survival from evil. Not whether you do terrible things, but whether you remember them." Jinko nodded slowly. It wasn't the answer he wanted, but it was an honest one. And maybe, he thought, honesty was a start. The New Horizon continued into deep space, carrying with it humanity's hope for a second chance. Behind them, Earth orbited its sun quietly, a planet that had learned the hardest lesson of all, that survival sometimes requires becoming the thing you fear most, and living with that knowledge is the price of staying human.